Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. The Honourable Mr. Justice Louis LeBel is one of the longest-serving justices on the current Supreme Court of Canada. He was appointed to the court by Prime Minister Jean Chrétien after a long career on the Quebec Court of Appeal, and Mr. LeBel will be retiring from the Supreme Court in the fall of 2014. He joins me now to talk all about his life on the top bench of Canada. Mr. Justice Louis LeBel, welcome to Beyond Politics.
Thank you for your invitation.
Well, it's just a real delight to have you here. You know, for a lot of people, being appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada comes with, I'm sure, a tremendous amount of joy and probably a healthy dose of fear and a huge workload. You also chose that as the opportune time to break your leg in the parking lot. How did that affect your year? This huge amount of change had just happened. Did you feel like it was a bad omen?
I don't know if it was a bad omen, but I guess that I felt that the sidewalks of Ken Street near the court were really poorly maintained. And I felt quite frustrated sitting there on the sidewalk on a rainy day, unable to move with the fur cap of an RCMP police officer on my head and a kind of blanket on me while waiting for the ambulance.
Did you think of suing?
No.
Okay.
I felt I really had some reservations about the idea of suing, and I had my purpose was rather to get better and recover.
And it was a long process, wasn't it? I mean,
well, it took several weeks. You know, there was an operation at the Civic Hospital where Dr. Chow put me back together, and then after that there was physiotherapy, exercise, and I spent some weeks in a wheelchair, on crutches, on canes, but I was not so long away from the court, because I had this accident by the end of February, and by the middle of March I was sitting at the court. The registrar of the time, Anne Roland, had arranged things very well. There was an ambulance. It would pick me up at the Minto Hotel, drive me to the court, deliver me to the court, and under my robes I was sitting in a pajama and slippers.
Were you really?
Yes.
Did you have to elevate your leg?
I had. I had to a certain extent, and as
in court.
Yes, a little, but under the bench. Yeah. Under the bench. Usually, the youngest, the most recently appointed, sits to the far left of the court, close to the cliff, but at that time the only place they could push in the wheelchair was just beside the Chief Justice, where one of the most senior judges, Justice Gontier, usually sat, which led Justice Gontier to say that I was so ambitious that I was about ready to do anything to sit beside the Chief Justice.
You also had the additional adjustment of having to work predominantly in English. You were attempting to both conduct hearings, but also to write in English. And that must have been a great challenge for you at the time.
Yes or no. It is certainly a challenge in the sense that you shift from one predominantly French-speaking environment, which is in the Quebec Court of Appeal or in the practice of law in Quebec, to the environment of this court. But I had been, to a certain extent, well prepared for that. I had studied law at Laval University, but also at the University of Toronto. I had done a good part of my practice had been in labor law and administrative law, which was largely English, law. And I had a stroke of good fortune when I was in college, at the Classical College, to receive 3 years of excellent teaching of English.
Why is it so important to you personally to be able to listen to hearings and to participate in them, and also to write your judgments in both French and English?
Well, I think first, I think it's simply a question of being able to fully access a particular culture, being able to understand it, and feeling that, well, we have two legal systems, two languages. I felt that in as much as possible that I should try to work in both languages. And also, well, when a case comes up in English, the comes from the common law provinces, it will be much easier in a certain way to try to work directly in that language. Things flow more naturally, and since I joined the court, generally speaking, I've written my judgments from the common law provinces in English. But in the case of the appeals from the province of Quebec, in the majority of cases, my first draft has always been in French, because I feel then more comfortable with the language of this law.
Let's take a step back to the appointment, to your appointment to the Supreme Court. It was right before Christmas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, if I remember, I think it was about. I think Christmas was on Friday. The first, what I heard, suddenly on Monday afternoon, I received a phone call. A phone call, and my assistant in Quebec City told me it's Jean Pelletier. I knew Jean Pelletier, a lawyer in Quebec City, but I knew the other Jean Pelletier was the chief of staff, and taking the phone, the phone, I knew which Jean Pelletier it was. And usually I had known Jean Pelletier for many years in Quebec City, and usually we addressed each other tu et toi. But this time it was very solemn. Monsieur le juge LeBel, le Premier ministre m'a demandé de vous appeler. Il désirerait savoir s'il vous offre demain un poste de juge à la Cour suprême, si vous l'accepteriez.
Et what did you say?
I told him yes.
You didn't hesitate.
Well, we had the process. Things had been going on. There had been a vacancy for 4 months. I knew that to a certain extent that my name was circulating. And that's something I had discussed in depth with my wife. If this offer was made, what should we do? And that's a matter that we had discussed and resolved between us before I got that call.
You know, Mr. Justice LeBel, you just said something very interesting. You said you talked about your wife, and you said, what should we do?
Yeah.
Why? Why is that so important?
Because, you know, at the time we had been married, my God, about 34 years. We had a life together. She had a professional life. She had been teaching for over 30 years at the law school at Laval University, and that was something that engaged her life as much as it engaged mine. And I felt that we had to discuss this matter and resolve it ourselves. And I may fairly say, if she had not agreed to the move, I would not have made it.
When you accepted, and you hung up the phone, what were the first emotions?
It was very intense. I was shaken because there was a sense that it would mean that it would change, that things would change a lot in our lives. And there was some worry. Also, you wonder if things may also derail at the last moment within 24 hours. And at the same time, I was not able to share this information with very many people. I'd been told talk only to my wife and to my children. Those were the only, and I think that they had spoken to my Chief Justice of the time, Pierre Michaud, in the Court of Appeal. And that evening, it so happened that we had our Christmas party in the Court of Appeal. And later, one of my colleagues, Paul Arthur Gendreau, told me that during that party, I seemed to be completely lost in my thoughts, absent. I was not speaking to the people, or not really addressing what they were discussing.
How, when you told your wife and children, did they react?
Well, they were. I think they felt proud, concerned with in the way this was impact on the life of the family, especially my youngest son was practicing law in Quebec City. They knew quite well that we would have to move to Ottawa, that the Christmases in the family home in Quebec City would be over, and indeed we had our last Christmas in that particular house in Quebec City a few days later.
It must have been very bittersweet in a way.
Yes, very much so. And well, the following day, I got the call informing me that I had been appointed. Actually, my wife got the call. I had some trouble with my car. I had gone to the garage, and then the assistant to the Minister of Justice tried to call me at the court. Could be rejoined at long last. She called home and told my wife that I had been appointed, that my order of counsel had been signed.
Yeah.
So I drove back home. I found my wife at the door, telling me that in substance that I was now a justice of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Did it affect how she treats you?
No, not really. Not really. I think the way we dealt with things at home remained quite the same.
Right.
I had to empty the dishwasher as before, and to cook breakfast for her as I did.
You also got a pre-Christmas delivery from the Chief Justice. Is that correct?
I found that this marvelous when we were taking a walk close to our home, when we saw a prolator truck stopping in front of our house, a box and carrying a box to our home. We rushed to the bus and got there at the same time as the prolator guy. And I saw he gave me the box. It was from the Supreme Court of Canada, Chief Justice McLachlan. So I brought the box in. And
it was Christmas after all.
It was Christmas. My God, a gift from my future Chief Justice. It's so nice. So I took a knife, opened the box. It was all the books and factums for the January appeals.
Were you upset?
Well, that was I felt.
That was a reality check.
A reality check, a kind of poisoned gift for the holidays, at a moment where we were rushing to prepare for the Christmas evening dinner with the family. I think it was. Good. Those were good intentions.
Of course.
And then
I hope she gives you nicer gifts now.
No, we're not used. No, she doesn't.
You talked a little bit earlier about your education when we were talking about French and English. You were educated by the Jesuits.
Yes.
It must have been you were 8, I think, when you started, or were you younger?
I was 10.
You were 10.
10 when I entered what would have been the first year of high school.
Right.
In a system, and I spent 8 years because it was kind of a combination of high school and college. It was patterned actually pretty much on the system of the French lycée or the German gymnasium.
Was it, we hear that the Jesuits are quite strict. Was it a strict schooling?
Not that much.
No.
Not that much. Well, there was discipline. There was undoubtedly. We were expected to work and to perform. But I found them very open-minded and interested in getting you to give and do as much as you could.
Right. Were you a good student?
Frankly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't cause too much trouble in that respect. Only in my last 2 years, which were the years of what they call philosophy, centered on philosophy. At one point, I was not very interested in what was the official philosophy, and what the accent of my professor in the first year, and looked into other matters. It went well during the first year of philosophy, but in the second year, I got another Jesuit who was older, far more strict, and that it didn't enjoy my excursions in other philosophy. So my marks plummeted. My father feared the worst, and
I'm sure he did. It's very distressing for parents when that happens.
But I think I didn't regret too much those 2 years. I didn't spend too much time studying the official program, but I spent time reading a lot about many things.
Did you learn Latin?
We learned Latin, classical Greek, and English. Wow. beside French.
Would you be the only justice on the court now who has that background in Latin and Greek?
I don't know. I guess that probably Chief Justice McLachlan has done some Latin, but I'm probably now the last of that generation.
Yeah.
But that was something I found interesting, and I did well in languages. I've quite forgotten the Greek. I still remember the alphabet, but I'm still quite able to read Latin.
You've taught yourself other languages too, have you not?
Yes, I've done.
Portuguese?
Portuguese, Spanish, and German.
Why? What's the interest in languages?
I guess that it was in the case of Spanish. It was what I would call a cultural interest, which I decided to study it. Portuguese, it was in the perspective of a trip to Portugal for a few months, and German. Well, I had an interest in labor law, as you may know, and there were some interesting things being written in German. So I would have liked to access it. In the end, it ended up that I didn't read that much law in German, but that I read a good deal of history, poetry, and literature in German.
How did you teach yourself?
You just took
a book, or
a book, dictionaries, and you read.
How did you find the time?
Once in a while, you do just an hour or so.
Right.
Yes, and for the in the case of German, at the time when I was in the Court of Appeal, we had a kind of 6-month sabbatical after 10 years of the court, and I used a part of it studying German.
Wow. You. Forgive me, I think I have this right. Your father was a lawyer.
My father
Your
was...
maternal grandfather.
My maternal grandfather was a lawyer.
But you wanted to be a doctor, did you not? Or what did
Certainly, I did. When I was a teenager, 14, 15, I dreamed of becoming a lawyer, a surgeon, a doctor,
yes,
a surgeon, a surgeon, but there was a reality check when I got into this part of my classical studies, when I had to study chemistry, biology. I was a complete disaster in lab. Nothing would turn right. If you made, there were experiments. Things would supposed to turn red. They would turn green, and there was never. And
did you ever explode anything?
No. But I spoiled and destroyed many things in the lab, and I discovered that I was not too clever with my hands, and that I would probably have been a public danger as a surgeon. So I had to regroup, rethink what I would do. For a time, my father was very worried that I would get into sociology study, but finally, in my last year in college, I found more interest in the law, and I decided to enter law school.
Law school is also where you met your wife, is that right?
Yes. She was, we met, actually I met her in my last year.
Yes.
At the university, but we started dating after I left.
After you left?
After I left the law school, after I returned from Toronto.
Were there many women in your class?
At that time, there were very few women. I think that when I graduated, we had one woman in our class, and my wife was the only woman in a class of 45.
Wow, isn't that remarkable?
It was completely different environment, and at the University of Toronto, at the law school at the time, there were only a handful of women. The law was, well, man's business, trade, and whatever.
It's so interesting that you had different career aspirations, and then you turned to the law, and then here you are now as a justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. I mean, it's...
The paths of life are strange and surprising. I would say simply, I did not think about becoming justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. Actually, when I left law school, when I left the University of Toronto, I remember one of my teachers, Professor Albert Abel, telling me, "Mr. LeBel, your duty is to become a professor of law."
Really?
told me that, and for a little while I thought about that, but I felt that interested in getting into the practice of law,
right?
Which I started. The family came. We got
Sure.
married.
You have 3 children.
Yes, I
so
found the practice interesting, and the possible academic career fell by the way. Although I did some teaching and writing from time to time.
I'm glad you didn't take his advice then.
No.
Did you enjoy being a lawyer more than being a judge, or do you enjoy being a judge more than a lawyer? Or are they just very different?
Those are different. I think I enjoyed the practice of law with these challenges, with its challenges. We had what by the standards of today would have been considered a small firm, 22 or 23 lawyers when I left the firm. But I loved judicial work from almost, I would say, the first day I did it, and I never really looked back, and I felt comfortable doing it, interacting with colleagues, listening to the cases, writing, and that.
And just one brief final question. What is it? I mean, you've talked a little bit about it, but what is it about being a judge that has given you such fulfillment in a professional sense?
In a professional sense is that you perform a public service. You're not doing things for yourself, for a specific clients, for the interest of a particular person. You're trying to do things for the country you're living in, for I would say for the development of the legal system. You have become a part of it. I think that overall a certain pride and joy on doing and on being a part of this public service, and telling, well, I'm not doing this for the investment, for the money. I think I can bring something, and I'm bringing it as well as I can.
Mr. Justice Louis LeBel, thank you so much for taking the time. What a great pleasure.
It was a pleasure for me also.